Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. Tonight, I'd like to deal with the issue of the elections and the involvement of the opposition, particularly CCC, led by Nelson Chamisa. There's been a cartoon going the rounds today depicting Nelson Chamisa sleeping comfortably after a heavy meal, and with his supporters looking on and telling him that the elections are near. You need to have a plan and proper party structures, which Nelson Chamisa has stubbornly refused. I think it is important that we reiterate, particularly now towards the elections, again and again and again, that people are making the mistake of thinking that CCC will bring about any meaningful change in Zimbabwe. The truth is, they are not going to do that. The people of Zimbabwe, ever since the launch of the MDC in 1999, have risked life and limb to elect MDC supporters and now CCC supporters or leaders into positions of power on the understanding they would deliver democratic changes designed to end the Zanu PF dictatorship. Admittedly, most of the ordinary people did not know what those democratic changes are and how they would be implemented. This has given room for the opposition, the MDC, to do as they please. The truth of the matter is, in the 23 years of MDC's existence, they failed to implement even one meaningful democratic change. And 5 of those 23 years, they were in the GNU when they had the golden opportunity to do so. I've said in other videos, and I'll say it again, Robert Mugabe bribed Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends. And they forgot about the reforms, completely forgot about them during the GNU. SADC, credit to them, they tried their best to remind Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends that they needed to implement the democratic reforms. And they were ignored. For 5 years, MDC failed to implement even one token democratic reform. It's sad that many Zimbabweans out there, even today with the benefit of hindsight, they still don't understand that the primary purpose of the GNU of 2008 to 2013 was to implement the democratic reforms necessary to stop Zanu PF rigging elections. Unfortunately, their failure to comprehend that does not change the fact that that was what was required. And unfortunately for them, by failing to comprehend that, it has meant the MDC leaders emerged out of the GNU with not even one meaningful reform implemented, and they got away with it. people still look to Nelson Chamisa and his friends to bring about change. Whereas in reality, if they understood that the MDC leaders sold out big time during the GNU, and they did not sell out because the GNU, the reforms were complicated, but because they are corrupt and breathtakingly incompetent. There is no cure for that. If people were paying attention, they should realize it by now that MDC leaders like Nelson Chamisa had their golden opportunity to implement the democratic reforms, and they failed to implement even one. SADC, credit to them, gave Morgan Tsvangirai and company the opportunity to redeem themselves. Just before the 2013 elections, SADC leaders told Morgan Tsvangirai and company that they should not participate in the 2013 elections, because Zanu PF was going to rig those. They needed to implement the reforms. Sadly, SADC leaders' advice was ignored. Nelson Chamisa and company went on to participate in those elections, and the rest is history. But what is important here is that if we go to 2013 elections, when SADC told Morgan Tsvangirai and company that they should not participate in those elections, SADC at that time, we've got to remember, was the guarantor of the 2008 global political agreement that gave rise to the GNU. So SADC still wielded a lot of power then. And for them to have said, do not participate in these elections, meant if the two factions of MDC, or even one side of them, had boycotted those elections, SADC would have had the power to say, no, those elections were not free, fair, and credible. And thus refused to give Zanu PF political legitimacy, which would have taken the country back to 2008, and the need for another GNU in which it would be underlined that the reforms must be implemented. But when MDC leaders refused to take that offer, that last-minute offer to redeem themselves, to boycott the elections, that was it. I think SADC at that point threw in the towel in absolutely utter despair. But what the ordinary people of Zimbabwe must understand today is that our friends, MDC, now CCC, if they failed to implement the democratic reforms during the GNU, when they had the 5 years golden opportunity to do so, and had the backing of SADC, I think it is clear they're not going to do it now, when they've lost the backing of SADC. If Nelson Chamisa and company refused to heed the advice of SADC to boycott the 2013 elections, when they had SADC behind them, what more now when they do not have the backing of SADC? I think they will participate in these elections. In fact, I think CCC have given up hope of implementing any meaningful reforms and delivering free and fair elections. All they're participating for now is to make sure they have got as many of the few seats that Zanu PF offers as pegged to the opposition to participate in these elections. Chamisa and company pretends they are serious on, oh, we are going to win big. In reality, they know that they are not going to win big. All they can do is pretend that they are giving Zanu PF a run for their money. And as long as they get as many of the few seats as they can, and Chamisa becomes the leader of the country's main opposition party, he's content with that. It's the ordinary people of Zimbabwe who've got everything to be concerned about. Because the failure to end the Zanu PF dictatorship has meant 43 years of this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical Zanu PF dictatorship that has left the country in economic ruins, that has left 49% of the populace living in abject poverty, that has left the country a failed state ruled by thugs who rig elections to stay in power. As long as Zanu PF retains their carte blanche powers to rig elections, I don't see any change. And it is clear that as far as the opposition is concerned, they've given up on reforms. They will participate no matter how flawed the process is for the sake of trying to secure for themselves those few seats that are available to the opposition. So the truth of the matter is, as a nation, we are well and truly stuck. And that's the truth. I think the key to ending this situation is accepting that the opposition are no longer fighting in the ordinary people's corner. They had their chance to implement the reforms, they wasted it. They had their chance to boycott the elections, to push for reforms, they wasted it. And now all they are interested in is fight for those few gravy train seats that Zanu PF gives away to entice the opposition to participate. That is simply not good enough. And I think after 43 years of rigged elections, we have got to wake up to the reality that the opposition is not offering anything. This nonsense about they've got strategies to win rigged elections is just nonsense. They have no strategy whatsoever to win these rigged elections. The best course of action for us is to implement the reforms. And since FDC and CCC are not going to do it, we have got to now accept they're not going to do it and denounce them accordingly. Because as long as we pretend they're going to implement the reforms for us, then we are always going to be in trouble. We're going to find us, we've been stuck, in fact, for the last 23 years with a party that is not going to implement any reforms. And pretending that they are going to do it is just plain naive. And I think we need to wake up to that reality now. Chamisa is not going to wake up. He's fast asleep. He is content with what he has. It's us who have got to realize that this is a vicious circle. Right now, Chamisa and company pretend they've got ways of winning these rigged elections. And they will go right up to the end, pretending they can still win these elections and win big. The morning after the election, all of a sudden they'll change tune and finally admit that Zanu PF stole the elections. But it will be too late, because by participating, you have given Zanu PF legitimacy. And you can't take that away. I think we need to denounce these flawed elections and denounce them loudly and repeatedly throughout the campaign period, and make sure that organizations like the regional body, SADC, know that there are many Zimbabweans out there who know these elections are flawed and are denouncing them. We need also SADC to know that we accept that MDC stroke CCC are corrupt, incompetent, and they've been let down during the GNU, and a complete sellout now by participating in these flawed elections. We have got to accept and emphasize to SADC that a failed or a discredited opposition cannot justify giving Zanu PF political legitimacy. This is a totally discredited opposition. SADC know it. And why they keep on giving that as the excuse for granting Zanu PF legitimacy beggars belief. We need SADC to be now honest and say, well, while the opposition is corrupt and incompetent, we cannot give Zanu PF political legitimacy, because yes, that may punish the opposition, but in reality, it punishes the ordinary people more than it could ever punish the opposition. Because it is the ordinary people who are on the coalface of this failed regime. And Chamisa and company are participating for the sake of the few gravy train seats, which if they get, they are very comfortable, thank you. Yes, those few who fail to get those seats are in the same boat as the ordinary Zimbabwean. They suffer with us. But the few who do get the seats, they will be very comfortable, thank you. And this is the vicious cycle we are caught in now. We really need the reforms, because at the present moment, the political system in Zimbabwe has become so corrupt that it cannot produce quality leaders either within the ruling party itself or in the opposition. And hence the reason why we are where we are now. We have got political paralysis. And the only way we can to end the political paralysis is by implementing the democratic reforms, which will free the political environment for meaningful debate and for meaningful democratic competition, which will encourage quality leaders to emerge. Both Zanu PF and CCC do not want the democratic reforms implemented, because most of those leaders know they will not be able to compete, particularly given their track record of failure and failure and failure in a truly democratic Zimbabwe. What we must not do is allow the few individuals to hold the whole nation to ransom. I think that is the worst thing that can happen here. At the present moment, that is exactly what is happening here. Just because the ordinary people did not understand what the GNU was about, and therefore did not understand that MDC/CCC leaders sold out, does not mean the nation should be punished forever. Amen. For that, we need to end this incredible, unnecessary suffering of the ordinary people, because we have got a political system that has failed. We can change this political system by rejecting the electoral process that is before us right now, by accepting that Zanu PF is rigging these elections, and the process cannot be democratic, by accepting that the opposition is participating in these elections out of greed, and therefore then have lost political credibility. These are the two messages that we intend to push and push and push until particularly SADC accept that Zanu PF cannot be granted political legitimacy out of a flawed electoral process and using the participation of a totally discredited opposition to justify the granting of the political legitimacy. Food for thought, and we really need to seriously think about it. This present scenario cannot be allowed to continue. Enough is enough. Thank you very much, and good night.